I'm joined now by Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. Lots to talk with you about today. Thanks for joining me. Take a listen to what President Trump had to say earlier today about the North Korean summit.
Both sides want to negotiate a deal. I think it's going to be a very successful deal. I think we have a really good shot at making it successful, but lots of things can happen. And, of course, you'll be the first to know about it if it does. But I think we have a really good chance to make a great deal for the world.
Senator, are you cautiously optimistic that this could actually be a sea change for our negotiations and relationship with North Korea?
First of all, happy birthday, Dana.
Oh. I'm getting older by the moment here, sir.
Well, we've watched administrations of both parties not be able to achieve what we had all hoped for in North Korea, and that is a peninsula without nuclear weapons. So this is as close as we've ever come. I think everybody's a little bit cautious when dealing with the North Koreans for all the obvious reasons. But this is quite significant that we've gotten this far, and the president deserves all the credit for getting them in a different position from any time they've been in this position in the past. Whether it was this guy's father or his grandfather, they were always unmovable on any of these type issues.
And then I wanted to compare this to the Iran deal. So President Trump made a lot of news yesterday by fully pulling out of the deal. A lot of questions are, okay, well, what's next? But I wanted to get your take and your institutional memory in the Senate, because President Obama decided not to ask the Senate to vote on that deal with Iran. And so he did it by executive order, which means it was very easy for President Trump to make the decision to actually sign a paper and withdraw it. Do you think that anything could be different in President Trump's approach with North Korea than President Obama's with Iran?
I do. I think President Trump will make a better deal. The Iran nuclear deal was a terrible deal. It was not submitted to the Senate for ratification under the Constitution as a treaty because the president knew he couldn't get the votes. So he simply made an executive agreement with the Iranians, which the next president could feel free to walk away from. It was a hopelessly, in my view, flawed agreement. I think President Trump did the right thing. I don't think he'll make a flawed agreement with the North Koreans. He
talked earlier today, the president did, about Iran and what the Iranians said immediately after his speech yesterday, that they might decide to just go ahead and full bore ahead with their plans to create a nuclear weapon and build one. Listen to the president on that.
Iran will find out. They're going to find out. I don't think they should do that. I would advise Iran not to start their nuclear program. I would advise them very strongly. If they do, there will be very severe consequence. Okay?
What is the Senate's role, if any, in terms of a response to Iran?
Well, we may or may not have a role in the appropriate response. I think the appropriate response is likely to be the reimposition of really tight economic sanctions, which is what brought the Iranians to the table during the Obama era. And so I think the president knows how to apply these economic sanctions. They worked well enough the last time to get the Iranians to the table. It's just unfortunate that we didn't make a better deal at the time.
Let's switch gears then back to domestic politics. So you're the leader of the Senate, and the Republicans have a pretty favorable map this year. But as you know, the first midterm for any president is usually a tough one. Last night, there were three big primaries: West Virginia, Indiana, and Ohio. I know you're very familiar with all of them, but I do want to start with West Virginia. One of the candidates, Don Blankenship, had decided that you were public enemy #1, and he really went after you and personally attacked you and your family. I know that you've got a thick skin, but when it does come to attacking your family, does it feel different?
Well, I'm glad the people of West Virginia decided that particular approach attacking me and my family was good for a distant third place.
Well, I know that you're probably pleased because you think that gives you a better chance to beat Senator Joe Manchin. Does that also play into the case in Indiana, where you have Mike Braun, who beat out the two congressmen who were trying to win that Republican nomination?
Yeah, I think all three of the nominees in Indiana would have been clearly electable, and Mike Braun, who won the primary, ran a good race. He's going to be our nominee, and I think he can win in November. You know, we had a couple of cycles in 2010 and 2012 when Basically, we took kind of a passive approach to primaries. A number of people were nominated who were clearly unelectable in November. We quit doing that in 2014, and we've intervened in primaries where we needed to in order to guarantee that we had fully electable candidates on the ballot in November. That's why we took the majority in 14, why we kept it in 16, and why we're going to keep it in 18.
One of the things that I find confusing, and maybe you could help clear it up, and it could just be the way that it is, that the president talks about all the good things that are happening. A lot of that has to do with what he's been able to get through Congress, especially like, for example, judicial confirmations, which has been under your leadership. And the president did respond to you, and as I understand it, pressure to do something in West Virginia, to step in and say Don Blankenship could not win. We do not want a repeat of Roy Moore in Alabama. Are you frustrated that people seem to think that you are not actually carrying out President Trump's policies in the Senate leading into this midterm?
Yeah, it's kind of exasperating because I think a lot of Republicans think we've underperformed. In fact, I've been in the Congress for a good while now, and this has been the most effective period the last year and a half, right of center, that is conservative positions, since I've been in the Senate. You know, whether it was the Supreme Court, Neil Gorsuch, or 12 circuit judges last year, we're now up to 17 and still counting. Whether it's deregulation, whether it's a fabulous tax bill that's gotten the country growing again. We opened up the Alaskan wilderness. We got rid of the individual mandate. I mean, it's been a dream period for conservatives, thanks to the president's leadership and our backing him up with a Republican Congress.
Well, and there's also just a little bit more tension to come. My last question to you is about something that the House Republicans, some House Republicans, are planning to do. Congressman Mark Walker had an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal today asking for you to do something. He said that last September the House performed its constitutional duty and passed all the appropriations bills required to fund fully the federal government. We sent those bills to the Senate before the beginning of the fiscal year, and Mr. McConnell sat on them. The package Mr. Trump sent yesterday is good, and his base should be encouraged in this moment of fiscal restraint. Hopefully the package is the first of many. Now Congress must do its job. Now he's talking about $15 million, a part of a rescissions package that's basically, to me, it looks like an accounting gimmick to make it look like there's actually funds being cut from the federal government. Where do you stand on that?
Well, the congressman is, of course, incorrect that Senate Republicans didn't want to pass appropriation bills last year. Senate Democrats prevented that, which is possible in the Senate. We are hoping to have a more cooperative period this year. It seems to be a better relationship between the Senate and the House, between the Senate Democrats and Republicans. With regard to the rescissions package, we're willing to take a look at it. I think the first job is for the House to actually pass it.
Pass it. Well, I hope that you have a good trip back to the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Do you know that horse, Justify?
It was a heck of a horse, wasn't it? It was a wet day, but fortunately my wife and I were not in the infield.
All right, Senator Mitch McConnell, thank you.